Studies show that more than 85% of people say that being publicly humiliated ranks among the most painful experiences. More painful than failing at something you worked toward for a long time. More painful than being rejected by someone you genuinely cared about. For more painful than the quiet, slow ache of feeling invisible to the people around you. And yet, for all the things we are taught growing up, nobody ever sits us down and shows us what to actually do in that moment when it happens. Why is it that the one situation where we need our words the most, where everything depends on what comes out of our mouths, is the exact moment the mind goes completely and utterly blank? And why is it that hours later, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, every perfect response comes flooding back all at once, clear as day? But by then, it is already far too late to matter. That is a feeling most of us know well, especially those of us who have lived long enough to collect a few of those moments we wish we could go back and handle differently. I want you to picture something for a moment. You are in a room full of people, a real room with real faces you recognize. Maybe it is your workplace, a place you have shown up to every single morning for years, where you thought you had earned a certain kind of standing. Maybe it is a family gathering, surrounded by people who are supposed to know you and love you regardless. Maybe it is a dinner table, full of friends you have shared meals and stories and laughter with for decades. And then, without any warning, it happens. Someone says something about you, out loud, in front of everyone sitting or standing in that room. Maybe they made fun of the way you speak or the way you express yourself. Maybe they reached back into the past and pulled out something you had done wrong, something you had already made peace with a long time ago. Maybe they laughed at your idea, your career, the way you dress, or something as personal as your weight. It truly does not matter what the specific thing was. What matters is the feeling that came right after it. Every single pair of eyes in that room turned, slowly and unmistakably, toward you. And in that one suspended moment, your heart jumped straight up into your throat. Your face went hot, like a flush of heat rising from somewhere you could not control. Your mind, which had been perfectly fine just seconds before, went completely blank, like a screen that suddenly goes dark. So you did one of two things, because those tend to be the only two options that feel available in that moment. Either you got angry and said something sharp, something that felt justified right then, but that you were already regretting by the time you walked to your car, or you went very quiet, smiled in a way that felt hollow and strange on your face, and swallowed the whole thing down like something bitter that you had no choice but to keep inside. And later that night, alone with the silence of your own house around you, you kept playing the whole scene back in your head, again and again, like a film you could not stop watching. You thought of all the things you could have said, the calm and clear and perfectly timed responses that would have changed everything. All the words that were right there, somewhere just out of reach. That would have made the whole room see things differently. All the answers that only arrived 4 hours after the moment had already passed, and there was nothing left to do with them. Here is something that nobody ever tells you, and I think it matters more than most people realize. The reason it still bothers you, the reason it keeps surfacing in your thoughts days or even weeks later, is not really because of the words themselves. It's because you did not know what to do in that moment. And that feeling of being caught without an answer is one of the hardest things a person can carry. But today, something changes. By the time this video is finished, you are going to know exactly what to do the next time someone tries to put you down in front of other people. Not just get through it and walk away hoping nobody noticed. Not just survive it and go home and feel small. Own it. Handle it with your full self. And walk out of that room with more respect than you had when you walked in. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to share is the kind of thing that genuinely changes how people treat you. Not just in one difficult moment, but across every room you walk into for the rest of your life. Before we talk about what to do, let us first talk about what is actually happening when someone humiliates you in front of other people, because most people get this part completely wrong. And getting it wrong is part of what makes the whole experience so disorienting. When someone embarrasses you in front of a group, your brain immediately interprets it as a personal attack, something aimed directly and deliberately at your value as a person. It feels like this individual genuinely despises you. It feels like they are trying to take something from you that you cannot afford to lose. It feels like there must be something fundamentally flawed or broken in you for this to even be happening in the first place. But here is the truth, and I need you to sit with this truth for a moment because it has the power to genuinely free you from the weight of these moments. In most cases, public humiliation has almost nothing at all to do with you as a person. Let me give you a way to think about it that makes this easier to hold on to. Picture a small dog, the kind that barks at absolutely everything it encounters throughout the day. It barks at cars driving past on the road. It barks at leaves drifting across the yard on a fall afternoon. It barks at the wind itself, at nothing you or I could ever see. Does that dog bark because the wind did something offensive or wrong? No, of course not. The dog barks because something is going on inside the dog. Something restless and unresolved that has nothing to do with whatever it is barking at. People who go out of their way to humiliate others in public work in almost exactly the same way. They are barking, and the barking, if you know how to listen to it, tells you everything meaningful about who they are inside, and almost nothing real about who you are. They do these things because somewhere inside them there is a hunger for attention that never quite gets filled. They need to feel powerful in a moment because they spend most of their time feeling powerless and unimportant. They need the group to laugh, even briefly, so they can taste the feeling of mattering for just a few seconds before it fades again. These are people carrying a great deal of fear and insecurity, using a sharp tongue and a loud moment as a way of hiding how small they actually feel. Now, understanding all of this does not mean you simply accept it and move on as though nothing happened. It means you stop responding from a place of panic and wounded pride, and you start responding from a place of genuine strength and composure, because there is one rule that, once you understand it deeply, changes absolutely everything about how these moments unfold. Whoever loses control first loses the room. It really is that simple and that important. When you get angry and fire back with heat in your voice, you have already lost before a single word lands. When you shrink and go completely silent and make yourself small, you have also already lost. The person who holds steady, who does not flinch or crack, who remains calm while everything around them turns loud and uncomfortable, that is the person everyone in the room quietly starts to respect. So the question you should never be asking yourself in that moment is, how do I destroy this person with words? The real question, the one that actually leads somewhere worth going, is, how do I stay in control and walk away from this with every piece of my dignity still intact? I am going to give you 5 real, specific ways to do exactly that, each one building on the last. The very first move sounds almost embarrassingly simple when you first hear it. But do not let the simplicity of it fool you, because this single move, done well, will immediately begin to shift the energy in the entire room in your direction. When someone says something in front of others that is clearly meant to embarrass you or make you look small, do not react immediately, no matter how strong the pull to respond feels. Pause. Take one slow, deliberate breath, the kind that fills your chest fully before you let it go. Look directly at the person with calm, level eyes, not angry, not pleading, just steady and present. Blink once, slowly, as though nothing they said has rattled a single thing inside you. That is genuinely all you do in that first beat. Here is why it works so well, and why it catches people so completely off guard. When someone chooses to humiliate you in a public setting, they have already anticipated your reaction and built their entire approach around it. They have prepared for your response the way a performer prepares for their entrance cue. Their whole plan depends entirely on getting the reaction they are expecting from you. The anger rising in your voice, the tears pressing against the back of your eyes, the visible flush of embarrassment spreading across your face, the nervous energy that makes your hands do something awkward. All of that, every bit of it, is the fuel that keeps their small fire going and gives them the moment they came for. When you pause instead, when you choose deliberate calm over instinctive reaction, you simply take that fuel away from them completely. You leave them standing in front of everyone, holding a lit match with nothing left to burn. No fire, no heat rising in the room. Just a silence that starts out belonging to them and slowly, in everyone else's awareness, starts to turn around and point back at the person who caused it. Your calm in that moment is not passivity, and it is not weakness. Your calm is control, real and visible and impossible to fake. And it is one of the most powerful things a person can show a room full of other people. The person who tried to embarrass you will begin to shift and fidget, because the reaction they scripted for is not coming. The people watching will quietly start to wonder what you know that gives you that kind of stillness. You have not said a single word. You have barely moved, and you are already, in the most meaningful sense of the word, winning. Here is where a lot of people stumble after that pause. Even people who manage the first part beautifully. They either hold the silence so long that it starts to work against them, turning from powerful to awkward, or they pour every bit of their energy directly back at the person who embarrassed them, which keeps both of you locked in a two-person dynamic that benefits no one but the aggressor. Both of those responses, as understandable as they are, keep you stuck in a position you do not want to be in. Instead, you are going to do something that nobody in that room will see coming, because it is not what people do in these moments. You are going to bring the group into it. After your pause, let your gaze move slowly and naturally away from the person who said what they said. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just a calm, unhurried shift in attention toward the people standing or sitting nearby. Not in a searching, desperate way that signals you need someone to rescue you. In the way that someone who is simply observing a curious situation might look around, relaxed and genuinely untroubled. Then you say something brief and simple, in the most ordinary tone of voice you have. Did that come across strangely to anyone else? Or is that just me picking up on something? Or you say nothing at all, and you simply let your gaze travel quietly across a few faces in the group, wearing an expression that is relaxed, open, faintly curious, neither smiling broadly nor frowning with tension. Just the face of someone who finds the whole thing mildly interesting. The moment you do this, something important shifts. You are no longer the isolated target standing in the center of the discomfort. You have become the narrator, the one framing and observing the moment from the outside, rather than the one drowning in the middle of it. You have handed the awkwardness back to the room like a package that was never yours to carry, and the room will feel it settle exactly where it belongs, on the person who created it. The aggressor designed their whole move around a simple two-person dynamic, themselves delivering the blow and you receiving it in front of witnesses. They did not account for you calmly expanding the scene to include everyone else. They did not anticipate you quietly inviting the whole group to look at what just happened and draw their own conclusions. Now, instead of everyone watching you struggle to compose yourself, they are watching the other person stand in an increasingly uncomfortable silence, with nowhere comfortable left to go. You change the entire shape of the moment without raising your voice by a single degree. The next move is going to feel a little uncomfortable the first time you try it. And that is completely normal. But once you use it, even once, and feel it work, it becomes one of the most quietly powerful tools you will ever have in a situation like this. When someone humiliates you in front of other people, name what they just did, out loud, in a calm and matter-of-fact voice, so that everyone in the group hears it clearly. Something like, "That felt like it was designed to embarrass me in front of everyone. Am I reading that situation wrong?" Or, "That sounded like a fairly pointed personal comment, and I just want to be sure everyone in the room heard it the same way I did." Here is what makes this so effective, and why so few people ever think to do it. When someone humiliates you publicly, they are relying on an unspoken social agreement that almost everyone in the room instinctively goes along with. They deliver the sharp comment. The group falls into an uncomfortable silence, and then, by some collective instinct, everyone quietly agrees to pretend it was not really as bad as it felt, to let the conversation flow back over it as though it never happened. The aggressor slides back into the gathering with no accountability and no consequences for what they just did. They received everything they came for, your visible embarrassment, and paid nothing for it. When you name the behavior out loud, clearly and without drama, you dissolve that agreement entirely. You are telling the whole room, with calm and steady words, that you saw exactly what happened, that you are not going to quietly pretend otherwise, and that you are not the least bit afraid to say so directly. This is not melodrama. This is not performing victimhood. This is the particular kind of courage it takes to say the true and obvious thing in a room full of people who have chosen silence. The room will feel that courage, even if no one says a word about it in the moment. People who have watched quietly will respect you for it in a way that tends to last. Naming the behavior also puts it on a kind of record that cannot be quietly erased. The person can no longer fall back on the easy defense that they were only joking around. They cannot claim that you are being unreasonably sensitive, because you have addressed the whole thing calmly, directly, and without any performance of being hurt. You are clearly not the one who has anything to be embarrassed about now. Sometimes, though, The person who tried to put you down simply is not worth the full weight of your attention. Maybe this is a pattern with them, something they do regularly with anyone they sense they can get away with. Maybe everyone in that room has seen this behavior from them before and is already quietly tired of it. Engaging with them directly, giving them the back and forth they seem to be looking for, only hands them exactly what they walked in hoping to get. In situations like that, you use what I think of as the redirect, and it is as elegant as anything you will do. The moment they finish their comment, you give them a single second of eye contact, just enough to communicate that you heard it, that it registered, that it did not slip past you unnoticed, but not a single second more than that. Because any longer begins to grant the remark a weight and seriousness it has not earned. Then you turn your body, physically and deliberately, away from them. You orient yourself towards someone else in the group and you pick up a conversation, naturally and without any visible effort, as though nothing of real significance just occurred. You might say something like, "I wanted to come back to what you were telling me earlier before we got sidetracked." Or simply, "Where were we? I was genuinely interested in what you were saying." This is not avoidance, and it is not a retreat. It is a conscious, deliberate choice about where your energy belongs and where it does not. The direction you point your attention communicates something to every person watching, and it communicates it far more clearly than any words could. By turning away and continuing a warm and engaged conversation with someone else, you are saying, without mentioning the insult once, that the attempt to diminish you sits so far below the level you operate, and that it genuinely does not warrant even a full sentence in response. You are not removing that person from the room with anger or contempt. You are simply removing them with indifference, the complete and unhurried kind, and for someone who arranged their entire moment around getting a rise out of you, being met with that quality of indifference is one of the most deflating things they could possibly experience. There are times, of course, when saying something back is not just appropriate, but necessary. Times when the group needs to hear your voice, clear and steady, so that the silence does not get misread. Times when you need to demonstrate, in the gentlest possible way, that there are limits to what you will absorb without a word. Not the loud, combative kind of response that signals you have lost your footing. The quiet, grounded kind that makes people instinctively understand that they are dealing with someone they should think twice about testing. 3 principles to keep in mind when you choose to speak. Keep your voice soft rather than raised, almost conversationally low, so that the people around you have to lean in slightly just to follow what you are saying. Because that physical lean in shifts the room's attention and the quality of focus in your direction. Keep what you say brief, 1 sentence or 2 at the most, because short responses read as certainty and ease, while longer ones begin to feel like justification and defense. Do not answer an insult with another insult, because the moment you do, you have stepped into their terrain and agreed to play by their rules. Here are some responses that work beautifully in practice, each one carrying a composed, unhurried confidence that is genuinely difficult to argue against. If someone takes a shot at your career or the direction you have chosen for your life, you say simply and warmly, "That is all right." Not everyone needs to understand where a person is headed. If someone drags up a failure from your past, something you have long since processed and moved beyond, You say with real ease, "Yes, I have made mistakes along the way, and I am honestly grateful that I know how to learn from them." If someone makes something personal, something about your private life, or the choices you have made for yourself, you say quietly and without a flicker of apology, "I am comfortable with who I am," which I suppose makes me fairly difficult to unsettle. Not one of those replies is loaded with anger or designed to wound. Not one of them is unkind or petty, but every single one of them is built on a foundation of self-possession that most people in the room will immediately recognize and quietly admire. They are not in the posture of defending. They are not positioned as an attack. They are simply standing completely still and completely at ease, the way a solid wall stands when things are thrown against it, unmoved and unthreatened. After you say what you have to say, do not stand there waiting for their response like someone who needs to know how it landed. Hold their gaze for one steady moment, and then let the conversation simply move on, because you have said what needed saying, and you have nothing left to prove. You were never looking for their approval. You have been carrying your own sense of yourself for a long time now, and it does not depend on what they think of you. Now, I want to talk with you about something that gets skipped over almost every time this subject comes up, and I genuinely believe it may be the most important piece of this entire conversation. If someone has humiliated you publicly, there is one question you owe yourself the honesty of asking. Was this the first time this specific person has done something like this to you or near you? If the answer is no, if this is part of a pattern you recognize, then the real issue is not the words that were said in that particular moment. The real issue is what this person has gradually learned about you over time through experience. People who do this do not select their targets the way you might draw a name out of a hat. They watch. They probe quietly, testing the edge of what they can get away with when nothing comes back at them, when there is no real response. They push a little further the next time, and further after that, until eventually they feel comfortable enough to put you down in front of a room full of people without a moment of hesitation. Because over time, through each small test that went unanswered, they learned that there are no real consequences to pushing you, that the ground will simply absorb what they do without pushing back. The 5 approaches I have shared with you today are genuinely useful, and they matter a great deal. But they are only half of what a complete answer looks like. The other half belongs to what you choose to do after the public moment has passed, and you have had a chance to collect yourself. Once you have walked away with your dignity fully intact, once the dust of the moment has settled, go to that person privately and have a brief, direct conversation, not from a place of anger that puts you at a disadvantage, not with emotion that can be used to dismiss you. Just clear, composed, adult directness. You look at them and you say, "What happened earlier is not something that can happen again. I am saying this to you in person, directly, because I believe in giving people that respect. But it cannot happen again. And I mean that without qualification. No extended speech. No ultimatums delivered with theatrics. No drama that gives them something to work with. Just clarity. Clean and unmistakable. Clarity is the language that people who know themselves tend to speak naturally. And it is the language that people who rely on others, not standing up for themselves, understand most deeply and most quickly, because they have spent years and decades finding the people who are too uncertain or too uncomfortable to ever be clear about where their limits are. From this moment forward, you are not one of those people. When you start moving through moments of public humiliation this way, something begins to happen around you that can feel almost surprising the first few times you notice it. People stop testing you. Not because they have decided you are someone to be afraid of. Not because you have become harder or colder or less approachable in the way you carry yourself, but because you have simply stopped presenting yourself as someone whose reactions can be easily predicted and easily exploited. You have become someone who stays calm when things get uncomfortable. Someone who speaks with clarity when clarity is called for. Someone who holds their ground without ever needing to escalate. The people who used to aim careless comments in your direction start behaving differently around you, often in ways they probably cannot fully articulate themselves. Because every time you hold your ground without losing any part of your composure, you are quietly and permanently rewriting the unspoken agreements about how you are to be treated. That kind of confidence. The variety that does not need to announce itself or perform itself for an audience. The kind that simply lives in the steadiness of how you breathe and how you stand and how you speak. That is what causes people to pause before they decide to open their mouths in your direction. Here is what I hope you take with you when this video ends and you go back to your day. Dignity is not a gift that other people decide to give you or withhold based on how well you perform for them. It is something you claim for yourself, in small moments and large ones, through the choices you make under pressure. And you claim it not by being the loudest person in the room, not by winning every verbal exchange that comes your way, but by being the most grounded, the most certain of yourself, the most genuinely and unshakably yourself. The person who humiliated you was counting on your panic taking over before your thinking could. They were counting on your silence swallowing what just happened. They were counting on your anger making you easy to dismiss. They were counting on the version of you that did not yet know what you know now. That version of you has already changed. Now there is one more thing I would like to share with you. And I have a feeling it may carry more weight than anything we have talked about today. It is about what happens before any of this starts. The things you can do in the way you carry yourself every day that cause certain kinds of people to think twice before they ever decide to test you. That conversation is waiting for you in the next video. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you will know the moment it is ready. And before you move on, leave a comment below and tell me honestly, what is the hardest part of this for you? Is it staying calm in the middle of the moment when everything inside you is reacting? Is it finding the right words when your heart is going fast and your throat feels tight? Is it the replay, the one that runs in your head late at night, long after the room has emptied and everyone else has moved on? Tell me what it is, because the answer you leave might be exactly what shapes what I talk about next.